From Newfoundland to California, Idaho to Florida, they've got the latest in AA hockey on the Coastcast. Here are Matthew Harding and Zachary Martin. Welcome all to another edition of the Coastcast. This is episode number 2 being recorded on Thursday. From Newfoundland to California. There we go. Thursday, October 12th. Don't laugh. 2023. He's over there laughing. He's Zach Martin. I'm Matthew Harding, your humble host. It didn't happen this week. It has happened. And we thank you all very much for stopping by. Hopefully, the promo or the intro looping will be the only bad thing that happens on this edition of the pod, buddy. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing good. It's definitely been a week, man. I can tell you what. But you know what? It's only fitting that we have our audio intro. Just be like, I'm going to do whatever I want tonight. Like, you know what? If it had to be this week, it had to be this week. But honestly, doing good. It's a great night to talk hockey. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. We're at the stage now where all you can do is just laugh at life. So
yeah, pretty much. Just gotta laugh it off at this point, right?
That's it. So thank you all very much for watching as we get you set for the 2023-24 ECHL regular season, which will get underway on Thursday night on the 19th of October with a pair of games, and then over the course of next weekend. Everybody will be in action. There won't be any seats quiet in arenas around the ECHL. So what we're going to do here on this episode of the pod is break down the divisions. We'll give you our storylines for all 4 ECHL divisions. We'll give you our playoff picks, who's going to be playing for the Kelly Cup when the season ends, when the very long season ends in April. And then we will give you our Kelly Cup champion when the very long season ends sometime in mid-June of 2024. And then I think we finally get a break. That's when we get to come back up for air, I think, maybe.
Kind of. Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
It's going to be a long season, but it's going to be worth it, though. I mean, how can you not love hockey at this point?
That's right. That's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. So let's go ahead and get into it here with our previews of our divisions, and we'll start first up in the north. Back up on that, we'll talk about some league news here since our last podcast, and the big one here is that Allen now has new ownership, going from Jack Galati, who had been the owner of the Allen Americans for the last 6.5 years. He bought it from Stephen Brothers Sports Management, who at the time owned Wichita, Tulsa, and Allen. Stephen Brothers Sports Management now down to just the Wichita Thunder. And so Jack Galati gets out of the ECHL ownership game entirely and is now sitting at home probably counting his dollar bills as Miles Jack and his mother are part of a ownership group now of the Allen Americans. And the organization will be run by Zoyer Sports and Entertainment, the same group who own 2 other ECHL teams and operate 2 other ECHL teams in addition to the Allen Americans. Your thoughts first on the news that former NFL lineman Miles Jack is getting into the ECHL ownership game with the Allen Americans.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Honestly, it's good to see, new ownership come in and just in a different representation of ownership too. So it's, could be more excited for the Allen Americans, get a new, face of who's going to be running the team and stuff like that. And it's going to be a family run thing. And just, it's a very exciting thing. It is always interesting though, when you see an entity own multiple hockey teams within the same league. But I mean, honestly though, it's just, like I said, it's great news. It's very cool for the Allen Americans, and I'm really excited to see what Miles Jack and his mom and the ownership group can do there for the Americans, and maybe the new changeling of the guard could maybe potentially give them some hopes to win a Kelly Cup in some point in the near future. What are your thoughts about all of it?
I like the move. Honestly, it's I think it's something that has been long overdue. I don't want to say Jack Galati is a bad owner.
Mhm.
Um, I think that he was more or less a placeholder to get the team to the next owner after the Stephen Brothers Sports Management Group. Um, Ownership at that point with Allen, when they bought when the Wichita Thunder owners bought into the Allen Americans, um, once upon a time, it was necessary to keep the Allen Americans as part of the Central Hockey League, uh,
Mhm.
because then if you didn't have Allen, you were going to be down another team in the league, and I think at that point they were down to 8, and you were facing the prospects of losing additional teams. So having the ownership from the Wichita side step in and purchase the Allen Americans, I thought was really good. It kept hockey going there in Allen, and they even won a few championships along the way with Steve Martinson there behind the bench for the Allen Americans. But I think that having a player um, who has um, having a player who has had the pedigree in professional sports like Miles Jack has, I think brings an entirely different look to it, because now there's actual skin in the game from somebody who's been there, who's been in the trenches, put in the two-a-days and things like that. So, for me, I think that is a really solid move for bringing them in, and this is a historic move as well. Jack and his mother Lasagna are the first African American majority owners in professional hockey history. So this is a huge get by the ECHL to not necessarily a get, but this is a huge move
Mhm.
because now we're bringing in more diverse voices to the table, and I think that can only be good things going forward. Remember, Anson Carter is part of a group
Yep.
bought
Mhm.
into the Gladiators, but he is not an owner of
Mhm.
the Gladiators. He's just part of that group. Miles Jack's name is on the front door of the Allen Americans. So uh, this is a huge deal for the ECHL, and it's a huge deal for players who want something else to do after football or after any kind of sport that keeps them competitive. Because hey, hockey's a competitive sport. I think we all know that, but having um, having an owner who is driven to win at all costs, like he is, and coming from that frame of view, man, that's going to get everybody to change how they do business, how they attack things in the workplace, how they attack things on the ice. It's just a whole different mindset. I'm eager to see how this happens, how things change and have changed since they took over. And I'm looking forward to it. This is nothing but good for the ECHL and for the Allen Americans.
Yeah, no, 100%. You love to see it. And like you said, more diverse group and different diverse voice. So yeah, I'm very excited for Alan and see, where things go from there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, looking forward to seeing them plenty as we will here in Wichita over this coming season, and hopefully getting a chance to meet Miles Jack and or his mother, and maybe we'll even have them on the pod here as we get a little bit deeper into the season. Outside of that, I didn't see a whole lot that
Mhm.
flagged my attention as we've been off the air here for a couple of weeks. Did you see anything else on the ECHL Newswire that caught your attention?
Honestly, no, not really. It's kind of basically been quiet on the front in terms of just getting ready for preseason hockey. I mean, as we're recording right now, there is some preseason games going on, and we got games all throughout the weekend coming up too. So it's a good, 4 days of preseason hockey before everything kicks off next weekend. So yeah, nothing huge on the news wire in terms of just anything that's going around other than we got some preseason hockey, which I mean, it's hockey, so you can't be mad about it. But
That's right. If some hockey is good, then more is better. So that is how you attack that.
yep.
Yeah, you're right. The ECHL preseason slate going on this week, and I
Mhm.
mean the fact is that all of the news that was going to come out, I think, being familiar with the ECHL news cycle, which doesn't
Mhm.
really change year over year,
Right.
um, being familiar with that news cycle, um, I don't think that you will see a whole lot of news until maybe the last couple of days, and maybe not even then. Actually, I think that this is now all about the American Hockey League sending players down, the teams opening up camp, and the teams making those announcements, and the player movements, and having all of their stuff uh, to get ready for the season. Then I think maybe at some point, once the season gets going, maybe a week or two down the road, barring, I mean, you'll get your suspension notices and things like that.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but I think we'll get into a more regular cadence of league news. Maybe after a few weeks, it doesn't feel like that we will get any more significant, earth-shattering league news here before the start of the season.
Yeah. Or barring something crazy happens. But yeah, at this point, it's like you said, it's basically just waiting to see who's coming. From the AHL teams. Like you said, camps opening up. Yeah, it could be like November or December before we hear anything league wide. Like I said, unless something huge happens and it's like a suspension or a big brouhaha breaks out in a game, and like that's gonna be some huge thing to talk about. But
Yep.
yeah, other than that, it's just kind of like we're just casually waiting till the games pick up, and then we actually can start talking about real hockey games and real storylines and stuff like that. So it's just unlike the NHL, we're kind of in a slow period right now where you're just kind of waiting for games to start at this point.
Yeah,
Where
slow. Yeah, definitely a slow period news wise.
Mhm.
And it just kind of caught my mind as you were talking about it. Once we get into November, and especially December into early January, we'll see that news cycle
Mhm.
begin to pick up again with um, all-star news. We'll
Yep.
have all-star players that we'll be picking, and then you'll find out things about what the venue is going to be, where the Hall of Fame stuff's going to be, and all of that. So yeah, it's coming. The news, I think the ECHL news cycle is going to slow down eventually, but the news cycle has pretty much slowed to a crawl, and that's going to be on the team level now.
Mhm.
But it'll come back eventually, beginning as you pointed out, sometime around or shortly after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, 100%. So
So,
yeah.
um, let's get into our previews here, and let's start talking about the North here, buddy, because the North has a new coach sitting in there in the North, and it's one that I don't think a whole lot of people thought uh, would be a coach, especially at the pro level that he is. Matt Cook being the Newfoundland Growlers head coach, and this will be his first pro gig. He had been coaching in high school in Minnesota. First of all, your thoughts on the hire of Matt Cook being the Growlers head coach?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting move that, like you said, going from high school in Minnesota, the self-opposed state of hockey up there. But I mean, for the Growlers to get him as a head coach, it's an interesting move, but I'm really curious to see how it turns out. I mean, Matt Cook is someone to keep an eye on. I think it's a different voice. It's a voice of a guy who knows what he's doing, what he's talking about. He's bringing some experience you know of his days and stuff like that too. So I think for the Growlers, it's definitely taking a flyer. It's taking a chance on a new coach for his first pro gig. But I mean, if you're going to start anywhere, the ECHL is a great place to do it. And I think just where the Growlers were at last year to get someone like this, I think that this could be the guy that could probably take him over the hump in terms of coaching wise. So I think it's a very interesting move for them, and I'm curious to see how it plays out for them. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I don't think it's like if you think it's that he's going to be the hothead that he kind of was on the ice, where he was cerebral and things like that. I don't think that that's going to be him as a head coach.
No, of course
Um,
not. No.
he brings a ton of experience with him, over 1,000 regular season NHL games and over 100 playoff games played as a player at the National Hockey League level. Um, I I like the hire, especially because what the Toronto organization gives you, especially in Newfoundland. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, they only signed 3 or 4 players during the offseason, but everybody there knows that team is coming from Toronto.
Oh yeah.
That team is coming from the Marlies organization. So basically, Matt Cook is going from a high school hockey bench to coaching an American Hockey League team in St. John, Newfoundland, in an ECHL city.
Yeah.
So, um, for me, this is a great situation for him. If I'm Matt Cook, like, this is the best possible situation that I could get into, because of that. Like, where else are you going to have essentially a junior program handed for a junior program at a professional level? Like, if that makes sense, like in juniors, you hear about coaches saying, well, I have my team. My team is already assembled for me.
Yeah.
I don't need to go out and recruit. Matt Cook has the same, it's essentially the same thing for Matt Cook. Like, his team is handed to him. Here are 13 players from Toronto, and here are the 4 that we signed. Do your best with it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's a, yeah,
coach them up.
yeah, it's a very interesting situation where you see most of the time you see an ECHL team carry what 4 or 5 guys from the AHL and it's a bunch of guys they've probably picked up, that they've re-signed or given a qualifying offer for or run through free agency. But yeah, it's a very unique situation going into Newfoundland, and you got, like you said, most of the roster is going to be from the Marlies. So that's it's like you're kind of getting like you said, like a junior version of an AHL. You're basically getting like an AHL part 2 team, like how it's like the MLS or whatever. It's like where they got like the main team and then they got the team with the 2 symbol with it. That's basically what it is. That's basically what it is for him. So it's almost like the Marlies 2.0
Sure.
with just whatever guys they have over there. So yeah, it's for that being his first job, we are kind of getting an AHL roster, but you're not in the AHL itself. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Matt Cook's got over 1,000 games in the National Hockey League. He's good. Like I said, he's not going to bring his on ice mentality that he had as a player, but
Right.
just the experience and being there doing that is going to be huge for these guys in their development and get them ready to go to Toronto, where it be the Marlies or the Maple Leafs, because the fact they got a former AHLer as your head coach, and and a lot of the guys you're going to be playing with, you might be with them in the next level up,
Right.
because that's just how deep the Toronto organization is, that they can send guys who could be with the Marlies are going to be in St. John's. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would like, we saw how good they were last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of do the same thing this year with the roster they got now. So yeah, it's a very interesting situation up there in St. John's.
Yeah, yeah, and then, lest we forget that they also hired Adam Party as their development coach,
Yep.
who played with the Newfoundland Growlers in their inaugural season in 18-19 and won a Kelly Cup.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be Matt Cook and Adam Party, who combined have 24 years of NHL of professional hockey experience. Adam Party has 300 games plus played in the show. Matt Cook has over 1,000.
Yeah, that's a good. I
And
mean, what other bench is going to have that much experience in the National League on the ECHL on as their bench coaches?
what
So, yeah,
what find me another bench in either the ECHL or AHL that is going to be as experienced as this Newfoundland bench is. I,
yeah,
hard to find.
yeah. It'd be very tough. I mean, the only team I can off the top of my head that might have some experience is probably the Checkers with Jared Stahl, but even then, it's
Yeah,
like it's not a lot. So
right.
yeah, I mean, right now I think the Growlers have probably the most experienced national wise of coaches in any league under the NHL banner. So
Yeah.
I'm saying I would say watch out for the Growlers just because of their bench boss at this point. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
The additions of Cook and Party have given the Growlers 1,506 games of NHL experience.
I'm sorry, no one's touching that.
No.
There's no team that's going to have a combined bench of 1,500 plus games in the National.
Nope.
Not going to happen. Unless you do, I'll be very surprised. But yeah,
Right.
that's just wild.
Yeah, not happening in this league. Definitely.
No, not everything. I don't even think in the AHL either. So, unless the Holy Grail can prove us wrong, I think we found our most experienced bench.
We've laid the challenge down to our friends over on the Grail podcast that you gotta find two coaches with 1,500 games of NHL experience underneath their belt. Dan Bilesma comes to mind, but
yeah,
I don't know how many games he played in the show. So
yeah.
You're not
I
going
don't
to touch
know.
that at this league. You're not going to touch that at this level. And here's the other thing that I think is really exciting. Both of those coaches are under the age of 45. Matt Cook is right there at 45. Adam Party is at 39 years old. So these are players who got out of the game recently enough that the players on the Growlers or Marlies are going to know who they are.
Oh yeah.
And I think that experience and that, oh, I know who Matt Cook is, I know who Adam Party is.
Yeah, that's going to be
and the intuition that they teach along the way. I think that's going to go a long way with player development.
Yeah, I think it's been one of those X factors that it's kind of like under the radar if you don't really know what's going on. So I think that's a huge boost for the Growlers going into the season for the fact, like you said, both under at 45 or under, which you don't see very much of. So I think that's definitely going to be a thing that could be a huge storyline as the season goes. That the experience and just the age of these guys, it's so close to the rest of the players. Even I think it's going to be huge for them this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about their opponent for opening night on Friday the 20th. It will be the Reading Royals, who I think had a really solid offseason player signing wise, and then they get loaded up from up the road in Lehigh Valley with a shade over half a dozen players sent to them. It feels like to me Reading is poised to make another run at a North Division title. But as we were just talking about, you and I both are of the same school of thought that Newfoundland is going to be the class of that division again and stand in the way of a potential Reading North Division championship.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Sam Wismer, who is going to be covering the Royals with us over at Field Pass, I mean, she was just telling me, like, she said, watch out for Reading this year because the fact, like you just said, that shade over 12 guys who came down from Lehigh Valley, they like just like Newfoundland, they got a whole slew of guys coming from the A down. They're going to be loaded up as well. So yeah, I think the Royals are going to be a team to be a force to be reckoned with. But yeah, Newfoundland is going to be an obstacle for them. I would even say Norfolk will be an obstacle as well because even they got a bunch of guys coming down from the Hurricanes because it's like they're affiliated with the Jets, but they also have like a working agreement with the Hurricanes too. So they kind of have two teams, and they just got a whole bunch of guys that who could be playing in the AHL. Thank you to the Chicago Wolves for deciding to go independent. So that's a whole different thing. But but I would not overlook Reading. Reading is going to be a really good team this year. Like you said, half a dozen guys coming down. Newfoundland's going to be a tough team as well. And like I said, even Norfolk's going to be tough. They got a bunch of guys, too, who just came down. Yanov Peretz is going to be in net for them probably, and he just won an NCAA title this year with a ridiculous record. Like he had a goals against under 1.5.
Wow.
Like a 930-something save percentage. It was like 34-4-3.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I mean, I think right now, if you're looking, I think the toughest division right now in terms of the cream of the crop for the North, it's definitely got to be Newfoundland, Norfolk, and Reading. They're all going to be tough because they're all going to be loaded with AHL talent on an ECHL squad. In a sense, that's going to be wild to watch.
Yeah, I agree. you brought up something, and I want you to put on your Carolina Hurricanes hat for a moment here. You mentioned Norfolk, and they got you're literally putting it on. Uh, uh, that's hilarious. Uh, uh, but uh, they sent 6 players
Mhm.
to Norfolk, and like you're right. It was supposed to be the Winnipeg Jets who helped Norfolk out this year, but teams can have handshake arrangements, and this was the Admirals and the Carolina Hurricanes taking advantage of a handshake agreement. Just speak to how unique this situation is, because every single day it felt like you were reading the transaction roster, and Carolina's sending 4 dudes over here and 3 dudes over here and 2 dudes
Yeah,
up here and a goalie down here, and oh,
yeah.
by the way, they're sending a goalie to Syracuse who's in the
Mhm.
Tampa Bay organization, and you're trying to figure out like who's on first, what's on second.
Right.
Just speak to the uniqueness of that as a Carolina Hurricanes fan.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because like I said, unfortunately, the Chicago Wolves decided to go independent, so now you don't really have an AHL affiliate. Can't get anything figured out, and at one, I mean, they're talking. I think this month the Hurricanes are supposed to visit the AHL Board of Governors to see if they can try to get a 33rd team
Mm,
and figure that out. And I think that's like what 10 million plus to get an expansion team. So who knows how
yeah,
that's going to work out?
right.
But yeah, it's like for Don Waddell and his crew up there in Carolina, you got to figure out where you're going to send guys. So I know they sent he almost saw me out to he sent them sent I think he sent them to Finland. They sent Unger Swarm to Sweden. Those are on loans, and yeah, Pierre Kachek, I was with Syracuse. I think they sent like 2 guys to Springfield. So now you got 2 guys within the Blues organization. Well, within the Blues organization, but as a loan players.
Right.
Like I said, Kachekov's got in, he's now in Syracuse, and then they sent almost all their really good young prospects down to the ECHL,
Mhm.
which, like I said, it's just very because we haven't had a independent AHL team since like what 1995, I believe. So
Yeah, I went
it's
back to
that,
the Chicago Wolves back in '95 when they were
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So tell me if you've seen this movie before. Chicago's gone independent, but it's just
Right.
but and that's the unique situation because now you got to figure out where you're going to send all these guys. So that's why you see a couple guys getting loaned to the AHL in different organizations, guys going back to Europe, and then it's like, okay, well, we can't send everyone to all these different AHL teams. Let's just all send them to our ECHL team with, like you said, with the agreement because you can do that in the ECHL because it's so unbalanced with 28 teams compared to like the 32, like the AHL and in the NHL. So yeah, you kind of have to have those agreements because you guys send guys somewhere. So
Right.
yeah, it's very unique, and that's why you see like guys like Noel Gunler, Yannick Peretz, and all these other guys come down to the ECHL. Now Norfolk goes from they're going to be a team to
Oh, they're gonna be a
okay,
team.
they're going to be a team with like
Right.
7 guys who could be playing in the AHL right now if Chicago actually decided to stay with Carolina, or if Carolina was able to get a 33rd team. So yeah,
Right,
now Norfolk's going to be a team to be like, okay, you got to keep an eye on these guys because now
right.
they just loaded up with now a reigning NCAA champion goalie and all these other prospects who could easily make an AHL roster, and a couple of them were vying for an AHL roster spot. So of course, it all depends on what's going on with Ryan Suzuki and Vili Ponomarev when they come back. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a crazy situation. Be like, all right, who's going where and all this other stuff. It's like trying to
right.
move like Jenga blocks and trying to play Tetris with like you go here, 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 and there. So
You
it's
need a roadmap, I feel like.
oh
You
my
need a
gosh, yeah. It's like where's this place? Like, well, it's over
right,
here, here, and over there.
right, yeah. Yeah, but
Oh
you're
my
right. You're right in the fact that Norfolk went from a team that was like, "Oh, you got 3 guys from, you got 3 guys from Manitoba," to, "Oh, you have
yeah,
3 plus 7 from Carolina. You're a team now." And
yeah,
and, you know, I'm a high guy on Jeff Carr.
mhm,
He had to go through hell last year with Norfolk and trading players out and really reshaping the culture there.
yeah,
And I think that this sets him up really well. I think he's such a dynamic coach from his days down in the SPHL, and even when I watched him as part of the Utah Grizzlies coaching staff when he was out here in the Mountain Division, and he came through Wichita just to see how he related to the players and how he coached with them and stuff like that. I really am very high on this guy, and I think that they have the right coach in Norfolk to handle these players. 10 American Hockey League contracts sent down to you, and he knows how to handle them because Utah got loaded up when they're with Colorado now. They get loaded up yearly. So he understands how to massage those egos, put them in the best places to succeed, and do this all while trying to win games. And I think that is vitally important because not only are you having to do this with 10 American Hockey League contracts, but you're trying to win and you're trying to rebuild the brand of Norfolk Admirals hockey in an area that has had that reputation has been stomped on and ran through the mud for the last handful of years because they've gone from the American Hockey League, where they were the cream of the crop with John Cooper, to now having been a bottom feeder in the ECHL for several years. And I think Jeff Carr is the absolute right guy to lead that organization.
No, 100%. Like you look at the team last year, 21-46, 47 points, bottom of the barrel in the division. And now you're looking at a team, like you said, who just got 10 AHL contracts. And they're going to be, I think they could be kind of up there, maybe 3 or 4, or however that works out, depending on how all those roster spots work. Because you look at, Newfoundland and Reading, they were 1-2 last year. And they, like we just talked about, they got reloaded up with a whole bunch of AHL contracts. Now Norfolk might have a shot to do something this year instead of being like, okay, it's just a roster full of dudes. And like you said, you got Carr. I think Carr is a great addition as the head coach. I think he's going to do phenomenal there. But now you get these guys on top of that. I think you're looking at a Norfolk team that could potentially possibly make some noise in the North this year.
Yeah,
with those additions as well. So I think it's kind of turned into from like Newfoundland, Reading, and maybe even Maine to now we could have a 4-team race for this division if you added Norfolk with those guys as well.
Yeah,
but,
provided that Manitoba and Carolina stay healthy.
Right, of course, yeah.
And then,
if that works out, but
because I talked to a head coach about this here recently. He said all these rosters are going to look really good, but injuries happen at this level. Injuries happen in the American Hockey League, and injuries happen at the NHL. Just because you start the season with 10 roster players doesn't mean you're going to finish the season with 10 AHL roster players on your ECHL roster. So hopefully they stay for a long time, and hopefully they're able to help Norfolk out. But the other side to that sword is that if they don't, there's the potential for it to go south pretty quick.
Yeah,
I'm of the opinion that if Carolina was going to send 7 guys to Chicago and they were going to be there all year in the American Hockey League, then they're probably going to spend most of the year in Norfolk as well.
Yeah, no. Like you said, injuries happen. It all really depends. And like I think for the Carolina guys, I think it's going to be more of an interesting aspect of like, okay, what injuries are going to happen, what guys are going to move up, because you're talking going from the ECHL right to the NHL, where like you said for the Manitoba guys, you're just going one level up. You're not jumping 2 spots up. Of course, it would be one. I mean, let's think about it. If Chicago was still there, a lot of those Norfolk guys who went down probably would have gone to Chicago. So it's just it's a unique situation for Norfolk. So like you said, if they stay healthy, cool. Then Norfolk could actually do something like we said. So it all just depends. But in terms of riding in Newfoundland,
it's going to be a tough one too to break through.
Even Maine, even the Mariners too. Like I wouldn't be surprised with those guys. So
I wouldn't either. Maine's quietly sitting back there in the weeds, waiting to break up into that, make that 2 a triumvirate there up north. And so just so everybody here knows, like we'll have our division capsules here, Zach and I will, but during the next week at fieldpasshockey.com, we will have daily division team by team breakdowns for
Mhm.
you as well. So you'll be able to catch all of that and more on fieldpasshockey.com. Let's move to your stomping ground, no pun intended, down south, where we find the two-time defending Kelly Cup champion Florida Everblades looking to make it a three-peat. I thought that there was a very interesting statistic on Twitter. I will never call it Twitter. I will never call it X. I will always call it Twitter. And our friend Barry Jansen, who does a really good job of running the ECHL stats and info,
Mhm.
um,
Great follow on there.
absolutely, had a tremendous stat that I wanted to share with you. I don't know if you may have seen it, but it said this season, Florida will try to become the first ECHL team to ever three-peat. And then he looked back at the previous 4 back-to-back champions. Interestingly enough, these two, how do I put this? Toledo and Hampton Roads all had their back-to-backs in 4 years. Allen and Colorado all had their back-to-backs in 4 years. So, but there was a 21-year gap, if the math is right, between back-to-back champions
Wow.
from 94 to 2015 when Allen won. Because the Toledo Storm won the last repeat championship in 1994. So Hampton Roads lost in the first round of their third title defense. Toledo lost in the first round of Hampton lost in the first round of their second title defense. Toledo lost in the first round of their second title defense. Allen lost in the second round of their second title defense. And Colorado said, thanks for the Kelly Cup. We're moving to the American Hockey League.
and we're taking it with us.
And it's going with us. Like, so
they basically pull like a CM Punk. They're just going to take the WWE title with them and just walk out of the arena.
right.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. The old CM Punk move.
Oh my goodness.
So I thought that was very interesting.
No, it is. Yeah.
That there has never been a three-peat champion, which look, I'm okay with, but that the 2 back-to-backs happened within 4 consecutive years,
right?
Twice, and that there was 21 years between repeat champions. That to me just blew my mind.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how it happened so close together, and then you had that long stretch, and now we're kind of in another, not as long, but a semi-long stretch. You're talking like what, 8 years now, if the math is correct, or 7-8 years now with because you said it was like 2015, right? For
2018 was the last of the 2 back-to-back.
Okay. So you're talking 5 years, and so it's still relatively. So we're not out. So we're kind of outside the 4, but it's still like we just got her back-to-back. So
right.
No, that is very interesting. The fact that you have a lot of back-to-backs so close together outside of that 21-year gap. So
right. I think it just goes to show that the league runs in periods.
Yeah, it's a very streaky league. If teams can stay hot with certain groups, then they can do it. But then it's like it's a short bubble. It's like a flash in the pan, 2 years, and then moving on to someone else, or we're going to be waiting a little bit. So yeah, it's very interesting how that's kind of like they got their own little small pockets of like this team was dominant, and then this team was dominant, and then there's like a bunch of teams winning, and then this team's dominant. So
yeah.
So
Florida, had loaded up with vets last year for the playoff run, ended up winning it. And now, you look at their preseason roster, just one vet. So did Florida actually get younger, or are they waiting to position themselves again for the vets to come home in time for the playoffs? That to me is the question, because we know that Florida is going to be in the playoffs. There's no discussion about that. I think Florida and South Carolina, I think you could set your watch by it. That come April, they're going to have X's next to their name. But did Florida actually get younger, or are they waiting for the vets to come back home come playoff time?
I would go some more of the latter than the former, where I think it's going to be they're waiting for their veterans to come back. Because you look at it last year, Florida, they were probably a little bit farther down in terms of like the seedings going into the playoffs. Like everyone's like, okay, Florida is wherever that they were at.
They were fourth.
Yeah. So and then it was just like, okay, here's a run. Like no one thought Florida was going to go on a run like they did, but they really did because they had really good goaltending. Like let's be honest, their goaltending was like next level.
Cam Johnson,
Cam Johnson was just the dude that just kind of like basically carried Florida. But like you said, I still think the veterans are going to come back when it's time for playoffs, and they're going to get on a run again. So I think it's going to be a year where it's like you're gonna see them like get through the season, get some wins here and there. There's going to be some tough stretches, but like you said, set your watch. Florida and South Carolina is going to be there. Jacksonville is going to be there. It's just you're just kind of like buying your time at that point.
Yeah.
So they got younger, but it's Florida, like you said, back to back. They've done this before. I wouldn't be surprised if they did it again. It's just like the Tampa Bay Lightning. They got a game plan going. They know what they're doing. You just got to wait for it to happen, and it's going to happen. So that's going to be how it is for the Everblades.
Yeah.
Don't worry how the regular season is going to go. They're going to be ready to go by the time we get into Kelly Cup playoffs.
Right. Buy your playoff tickets and just block off that 2 months there.
Right. Don't go on vacation. Just start. Just get your playoff tickets ready at that point.
You know what? Your season tickets are actually going to be your playoff tickets. So just you'll be
all right.
Yeah, and it's the same in South Carolina as well. I think that there's no doubt Brendan Kotick is a very good head coach there. 45 wins for the Stingrays last season and a division championship in Kotick's first full year behind the bench. And they went from allowing over 200 goals the year before and missing the playoffs to having 263 goals for last year and only allowing 194, which was the lowest in the division. So I think that South Carolina's loaded up again from Hershey, who themselves have loaded up for another.
It's Hershey. It's just top to bottom. The whole organization is it's wild. But like even going back to Florida real quick, they were 7th in the East going into the playoffs. 7th, 4th in the South, but 7th in the entire conference. But like in the Stingrays, 2nd in the entire East.
Nuts.
It's just one of those things where South Carolina's going to do it. Like you said, like the goal differential is insane. But how about this though too? Only 4 overtime losses and 1 shootout loss all season last year.
Yeah,
that's it.
While Florida suffered 9.
Yeah,
think of that. Like you take 9 points to Florida, and they're sitting right there in second. So the stats are a little deceiving there, where you
really are
7th in the East at the finish of the regular season. But if you take those 9 points and you take them out of the overtime shootout loss column, man, Florida's sitting right there with South Carolina, really as it should be. Like, it just feels weird if Florida and South Carolina are not sitting there neck and neck battling to the end. And you're right, in the same way we were talking about Newfoundland and Reading in the North, Jacksonville really has come in and been the bully to take the 3rd seat at the table.
Yeah, they really have.
Not for a lack of competition, though, because Greenville has been on the charge since Andrew Lord took over behind the bench.
No, 100%. And like you were Greenville last year, 4th in the entire conference. And you look at their overtime loss and shootout loss, 9 combined
9 points. Yeah,
and they still got 244 goals for and 211 against. That's a good plus 33 to have. And the fact that you're looking at a South Division, that is absolutely stacked with teams.
Yes,
like I said, South Carolina, Jacksonville's coming and made some noise. Greenville's making noise. You got the Everblades. Even the Gladiators finished 8th.
Yeah. True.
What does that really tell you how the South Division is right now with all those teams? Yeah, Greenville, 40-23, 8-1 last year. And the thing is, they brought a lot of guys back last year
Mm-hmm.
from last year's team. They got some great additions as well. There's recently they had a whole bunch of different names just come down from Ontario. So now you got some Ontario guys down here too, and that's already has a roster that Tanner Eberle's back. You brought Somoza back. You've got this roster. I think that Greenville is gonna be making a lot of noise this year.
Yeah. I think if
In a
you're
really tough division.
yeah,
It's the South.
yeah, and I mean if you're looking for a place to kind of nitpick, yeah, you're maybe 211, maybe a little too many goals.
A little bit, yeah.
Still, but you know, I don't know about that. Like,
I mean,
think you're just nitpicking.
Florida was 225 to 213. So
Yeah.
even Florida's was a little bit tighter too.
Right.
Yeah, not everyone can be South Carolina and give up less than 200 goals in a season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
And certainly nobody's going to be like Idaho and only allow 153. Like,
yeah, I mean,
that's just,
yeah, it's a very absurd. Or even Toledo with 179. Like,
yeah,
come
that's
on, really? Yeah, like 170. The fact that Idaho didn't win the Kelly Cup is surprising for the fact that how just absolutely. We'll get to that. We'll talk about the West here in a little bit, but it's just wild. It's just wild that you look at these teams and these goal differentials. You're like, how?
Yeah, but
How?
to your point, and I think that speaks to the veterans coming home for Florida.
Yeah,
You take Idaho and Florida and you match them up straight up with the vets that Florida had at the end of the year.
yeah,
and Idaho steamrolls them.
Exactly. Yeah, because like I said, Florida was the 7th seed going into the playoffs.
Right.
No business to go on that run. No business. Because you just look at the top. Like, how does Newfoundland, South Carolina, and Jacksonville not go do something?
Right.
And it's Florida. If it wasn't for the vets coming back for the Everblades, they don't even touch the Eastern Conference Final. Don't even touch it. But it was Cam. I'm telling you, Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson is the reason why Florida went back to back. If it wasn't for him, it's done. We're not talking about Florida on a back to back.
Sure,
but that's just how crazy. Like I said, a plus 12 going into the playoffs, and teams who had a bigger number couldn't figure them out. It's right. It makes no sense.
And in the playoffs, Florida ended up going from a plus 12 goal differential entering the playoffs to coming out of it with a plus 20.
Cam Johnson. The Cam Johnson effect. That's all it really was. It's like what?
Absolutely.
It's hockey.
Right. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, like storyline wise, we have down at the bottom there, like I think we know pretty much who the 4 seats at the table are in the South. If we were going to pick playoff picks, and we'll do that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But which of those 3 teams, Atlanta, Orlando, and Savannah, can break through that glass and get in and supersede one of those 4 playoff teams from the South? It's really tough.
It's tough because you look at the team, you look at them last year, like points wise, it was only 8-point difference between Atlanta and Florida, but then you look at the goal differentials, it was 226 for and 240 against for Atlanta. That's such a difference. And even looking at Orlando, 219 to 260, and then Savannah 207 to 258. For me, Atlanta got players. Orlando kind of got guys. Savannah maybe too. It's just for me because the fact that if you're Savannah, you're gonna have to hope that they send guys from Hendersonville down. But the problem is Vegas isn't a team that's you don't see them really loading up on prospects. You see a lot of they're mainly focused on their NHL team. They're not really focused on Hendersonville, which means they're not really going to focus on Savannah.
Right. That's a great point that you bring up, because not only are you talking about Savannah and their ties to Vegas,
Mhm.
but Orlando and their ties to Tampa Bay. And what do those two teams have? Cap issues at the
Yeah.
NHL level. So that means that is fewer contracts for the American Hockey League team. That is fewer contracts that come down to your ECHL clubs,
Mhm.
and that you're bringing up rookies. You're bringing up those younger players from juniors and from overseas and things like that. And those are tougher players to develop in
Mhm.
season. That needs to be something that is done from the time training camp breaks, I think. So the
Yeah.
logical, if you're asking me, the logical team to break from those three has to be the Atlanta Gladiators. They do have Derek Nesbitt, first year head coach behind the bench, and they have a new affiliate with the Nashville Predators and the Milwaukee Admirals. And by all
Even then, that's tough too. Even
yeah,
then, that's tough.
yeah, like even then, like it would have to take. I honestly think you'd have to take 40 to 40. You'd have to take 41 to 43 wins to even get to fourth. I
Yeah.
think that's what it's going to take this year to get to fourth in the South Division. It's going to take winning at least half of your games
No,
to
100%.
even have a chat.
Yeah, because like even Florida's 38 last year. We even talked about it, it's a misnomer because if you take those 9 overtime losses and you like
47 wins.
yeah, you shrink that down. Like, I would say if you take like, let's say if it's like 3 overtime losses and like 2 shootout losses, you take at least 5 out of those 9 away from that area
Mhm,
and you throw it over to wins. Yeah, that's 43.
mhm,
So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like the Everblades record doesn't really match with how they play because, like we just talked about, they had all those veterans come back, and that
right.
record's kind of like it's a misnomer. It's a outlier type record.
Yeah,
So yeah, like you said, I agree with you. I think you got to hit 40 plus to even be considered a consideration. And yeah, the Gladiators got 35, but they were 35, 36, and 1. And they were still 8 points back. Where are you going to get an 8 point swing where those top 4 teams all got better or younger for Florida, but they're going to have their guys come back too. So it's just
mhm.
the,
Yeah,
the logical answer is Atlanta, but even then, I still don't even see that either. I think
yeah,
you kind of got your 4 teams in the South, and it's just seeding at that point. But
correct. Yeah, I think at that point you have your 4 teams, you're just battling for seeds as you point there. I think if you're I think if you're a little concerned, like like if they team maybe something to be concerned about is maybe Jacksonville
yeah,
because Charles Williams retired. Um, but
I could see a
again,
dip
like
for Jacksonville, but
yeah,
not
even
that
then,
much so.
their new affiliate with the Buffalo Rochester with the Buffalo Rochester uh, pairing, I think still like it brought Cincinnati back warm last year, who ended up racking up 28 wins.
Yeah,
They do have good goaltenders in that Rochester Buffalo pipeline. And here's the other thing, and don't overlook this. Buffalo has cap space. Buffalo can go out and get players for Rochester and then by in turn they bring down those younger players to develop and marinate at the ECHL level. And I
yeah.
think that is what has made South Carolina so good, and
Hmm.
that's what made Florida so good. That and the fact that it doesn't suck to recruit to those two places either. I think
Yeah.
that is the secret sauce for all of those teams there.
Yeah, and even for Buffalo, I mean, they just signed Owen Powder a huge contract. Even Dahlin too. Dahlin just got a huge contract as well.
Yeah.
Like you said, they still got cap space, and Rochester is still good AHL team, and they did pretty decently last year. So yeah, it, it's just the fact that you got teams. Those 4 teams have rosters. They have the cap space. They have ways to develop their teams. Like for Greenville, you got
Mhm.
the LA Kings. They still got cap space. But you look at Ontario. Ontario's always they've been pretty decent as well,
They're
and
deep.
they're deep. Like they're deep, or they're sending at least 5 or 6 guys from the AHL squad from Ontario. It's very interesting. You're going from Ontario, California to Greenville, South Carolina. talking about a culture difference going from SoCal to the upstate in South Carolina. But even then, that's still a deep roster too. So it's just, I think for Atlanta, Orlando, and Savannah, you're kind of shoestrings. You're kind of behind the eight ball of your organization is not deep. The cap space isn't deep, and you're facing 4 teams that have basically huge organizations that can give you roster spots. Because here's another thing we were going to talk about in terms of storylines. Jacksonville just got a new affiliate with Buffalo. They just switched over from the Rangers. Mm-hmm. Atlanta did switch. Now they're with Nashville, like you said earlier. But even then, it's like we got some new affiliations, but it's like some of the affiliations actually work out better for certain teams.
Right.
So I think for those 3 teams at the bottom, it's just going to be a tough year for them because every other team above them has rosters within the organization that is deep enough. If you look at Florida, we look at the in terms of the Panthers, it's very interesting how you look at them going to Charlotte and now Charlotte going down to the Florida Everblades. Now, granted, the Florida did lose a lot of guys to other teams through waivers. Like Denisenko's not there anymore; he's gone. Mm-hmm. Ludwig's also gone. They've lost a lot of guys from the Checker side of things too. So now it's very interesting how they're going to work that out as well. Right. So, but those four teams right now, I don't really see anyone in the bottom 3 kind of superseding any of them unless one of them just has a complete injury riddled, or the teams above them call every single one of their guys up, and then you're just kind of a shell of a ECHL, SPHL team at that point. So I don't know. The South is very top heavy.
Oh yeah, always has been. Yeah. Always has been. Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and take a time out here. We'll get you some DraftKings info, and then we'll come back on the other side of the break and start our Western Conference breakdowns. And we still have our playoff picks as well. That and more when the Coast Cast continues in about 90 seconds. Hang in there. The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking up new customers with an offer that's even stronger. Bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers could take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October. Take, for example, the Miami Dolphins, who are an overwhelming 13-point favorite against the Carolina Panthers this Sunday. Get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code THPN. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, HOPE is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boo Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right. Look back. 2024. Starting with you as we continue to count it down. We are here just a few days before the start of the ECHL season. Let's move to the Central Division here, where last year it was won by the Cincinnati Cyclones, although Toledo put up a really big charge in the second half of the season, and it ultimately ended up being the Cyclones winning. Toledo and Fort Wayne have new faces behind the bench. It is Jesse Kalecki, who the new coach for the Fort Wayne Comets, and then Dan Watson, who was the former coach of the Toledo Walleye, has gone on to coach the American Hockey League Grand Rapids Griffins there. So a well-deserved promotion there for Dan Watson. So let's start there. The Toledo and Fort Wayne coaching changes, who has the edge in the coaching right there from the outset?
I would love to say Fort Wayne, but right now I think Toledo. I think they kind of got the edge in terms of that, and the fact of coming off of last year where 45-19, 5-3, the goal differential is just like we talked about earlier, 179 goals given up.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact you got that team and they bring in the head coach that they have now, I think Toledo kind of has more. It's not a huge margin, but I think it's a slight edge to Toledo. But I want to say the Fort Wayne edition though is very, very strong for them, and I think even Fort Wayne could probably use that addition to probably help them get over the hump too and get a little bit farther up the division standings. But for me, I think it's kind of Toledo, but it's close. It's very close. I wouldn't say it's like a wide gap.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other side on that, and I'm going to push back and say Jesse Kalecki, who has the edge there when you're talking about Toledo v Fort Wayne. And the reason is this: he just won 2 Kelly Cup championships behind the bench with Brad Ralph in Florida, the team we just talked about in the last segment.
That's very true. Yeah, that is very true. Yeah.
So yeah, to me, I think that the hardware that you bring to the job means quite a bit. Now, that's not to say that Pat Mickish doesn't have hardware. He has one in the NAHL with Green Bay, and I mean he was served as an associate head coach and director of scouting under the Detroit Red Wings head coach Derek Lalonde. So, I mean, this guy knows talent when he's seen it. It's like I said, it's
like I said, it's a very small margin. It's kind of like it's a toss up. Like you think it's Fort Wayne, I think it's Toledo, but it's
Sure.
very close. It's kind of like you can pick. It's so close because, like you said, one's got hardware from Florida, the other one has got hardware, but also knows how to find talent with someone with Detroit. So yeah, it's when you look at it, both really great options. It's kind of interchangeable of like, who would you say has the edge? I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
it's
very, very, very tough, and I think it's very even there. But and that's going to be the storyline. I think a storyline to watch through the year, and then the second storyline that I have there in that division is who ends up being the powerhouse in that division. If we assume, probably wrongly so, that Toledo and Fort Wayne aren't the powerhouses in the Central Division anymore, then who steps up to fill that vacuum? Do we see Wheeling come in now with new GM Kyle Dubas and up in Pittsburgh, and his propensity to put players down in Wheeling? And we've already seen this already with them receiving up to 9, I think at one point, 9 players from Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So does Derek Army and the Wheeling Nailers jump into that conversation, or does Indy take another step? They got off to a hot start last year, fell kind of in a free fall a little bit toward the end of the season, only to get dusted in 4 games by Toledo in the opening round of the playoffs.
Would you say that they ran out of fuel later on in the season?
Yes, I did. Yes, I would. Well done, my friend. Well done.
Hey, you know what? They say all gas, no brakes, but you can't have brakes if you don't have gas to get the car going. So I mean,
that's true.
I'm sorry. It's too easy.
Sitting there. It was just sitting.
It was parked. I had to take it. I had it, but
that's right.
No, but I think with the Nailers, and this. Talk about Sam Wismer again. She also does cover the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, so kind of feeds into the what. I think Wheeling does take a step. But I don't think you're going from a team who went 29, 38, and 5 last year. Surprisingly, no shootout losses.
Yeah,
0.
Yeah,
it's just a minus 21 goal differential. A team who was 63 points. They were 12 back of Fort Wayne. I think they're going to take a step, but I don't think it's going to be, okay, well, now we're in the conversation. I think it's going to be maybe a season and a half before we can start saying that they might be there.
Yeah.
I think the Indy Fuel might have a case for next year, because you look at how Chicago is getting loaded up with the young guys. They did bring veterans in too, but they've drafted pretty well. They own Rockford. Rockford's got a good roster up there as well. I think that kind of feeds into Indy. So I think, because we talked about the teams in the East, if you got depth in your organization, your team gets better.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not talking about Cincinnati, Toledo, or Fort Wayne being like the cream of the crops of this division, I think the Indy Fuel could be a team that could take that next step to be like, okay, we are going to be all gas, and we are going to finish. We're going to go over the finish line and do this thing. So,
yeah, I think if you're a Fuel fan, just having what happened at the end of last year leaves a lot of, leaves just a sour taste in your mouth. I mean, it's like getting super premium gasoline when you need unleaded. Like, it's just an awful, just feels
yeah, you accidentally grabbed the stale bag of Skittles instead of the fresh bag because you were kind of in a hurry to get there, and it's like, oh, great.
Oh, these aren't Skittles, these are boulders. Yeah.
Yeah. You chip a tooth, and you're like, oh, well, here we go, I guess. Yeah. So
sure hope that $3 bag was worth it.
Yeah, right. It's just, yeah. If I think that's kind of like a great learning lesson for Indy is like, if you come back in the next year, okay, we know we got a hot start. The season didn't end the way we wanted to, but we can use this to fuel ourselves.
There you go.
Continue next year. I'm sorry, Indy makes it too easy for me, but
that's right.
But no, I think that's a great learning experience for a team like Indy to take that next step to be like, okay, we know we saw what we can do. And as long as we don't replicate that back part of the season, they could take the next step, because they were only 7 points back of Toledo for the second spot. And they had a pretty decent goal differential, 244 to 208.
Yeah.
I think Indy could possibly be that team to take that step and kind of make a claim for that Central Division.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I have a hard time, for my money, seeing Kalamazoo and Iowa coming up there and rattling the cages. I just don't know about those two teams. But I mean,
that's 189 to 2. The thing is, how the K-Wings were, the fact that they were 178 to 226 and still finished fifth is absolutely wild to me.
Well, I think it speaks to how bad that bottom third of the division was, because they were just all beating up on each other.
Yeah, because Kalamazoo was 64, Wheeling was 63, but then you got Iowa at 58, and they were 189 256.
Yeah, and Iowa did make a charge at the end of last year.
They did. It was a lot worse. They did kind of make. I guess that momentum could help them try to not be last in the division, but like you said, yeah, it's just out of those three teams at the bottom, who could probably make a jump out of that pit of despair? It's probably going to be Wheeling, just because of the fact, like you said, they got 9 guys from Wilkes-Barre going down there to help them out. So you could probably see a charge from Wheeling. How much of a charge? It remains to be seen, because like we talked about the South, Fort Wayne, Indy, Toledo, and Cincinnati are like, they're the pillars of this Central Division.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just gonna be tough for those three teams at the bottom to make any case to be like, all right, we're here, we're going to do something.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely agree with that. Let's move a little bit further west to the Mountain Division, where we find the reigning Brabham Cup champion Idaho Steelheads, coming off of a 119-point effort a season ago and no Kelly Cup, with 58 wins. They had a goal differential, Zach, I'll do the math for you. That is 127 to the good there for Idaho. And then after that, they won the division by 52 freaking points. They had that division wrapped up in mid-February. Like I said,
I'm surprised it wasn't done by December at this rate.
it was done by December. Everybody out in their dog out here knew it was done by December.
It makes you think. It's like, is Idaho that good? Is the rest of the division that bad? Because if you look at everyone else,
Well, but here's the thing: Idaho beat up on Utah, who got off to a slow start last year, and beat up on Utah. That I mean, I
yeah,
think like 7 of their first 10 games were played against Utah, and I think I don't think they lost, maybe 1 or 2. The rest of that division, Allen, Kansas City, Wichita, Rapid City, Tulsa, all beat up on each other.
yeah.
So I honestly think that I think the better question that I had, and I had it written down, can Idaho replicate last season? I think that's a horrible question. I think
Oh,
that their last year was such an outlier. I think that
yeah.
they're going to come back to the pack this year because they've seen a lot of those players graduate to the American Hockey League. I think
Yeah.
they're going to take a step back some this year.
They're gonna be like the Boston Bruins, where you win 60 something games, even if you take 20 of those wins away, that's still a pretty good
Oh yeah,
45 wins on a
yeah.
season.
I think
See,
anybody would love to have 20 of those wins off of Idaho, but like I said, I think they take a step back, and I think the question probably should be framed of from whether they can replicate last season to how much of an outlier was last season's team.
I,
And I
I,
think you have to play out this season to see just how much of an outlier it was.
what? Yeah.
Yeah.
What, I mean, with a win percentage of .826, you don't see that very often in the
No.
ECHL, where you have 3 overtime losses, 3 total, but you only lost 11 games in regulation. So
Yeah.
you're talking what?
14
14,
losses in 72
14.
games.
Right. You said the goal differential was like 100 and
127.
what? I'm sorry. You're not going to do that again. There's no way you're going to be able to do that because your goaltending was amazing, but somehow Florida just wanted to do
And
Florida things
they had
apparently.
3 goaltenders. They had 3 goaltenders. All of them played in the American Hockey League last year. The 3rd goaltender they did not activate for the playoff run.
Yeah.
They left an American Hockey League goaltender sitting on the shelf.
Yeah, which is, it's crazy. And it could be one of those things where it could be the outlier, but like, you take away 11 of those wins from the Steelheads, you're still talking, they're probably down to the Cincinnati area where you're still getting 100 and something points. I don't think we're going to see 119. I just don't. But like I
No.
said, you take away a dozen of those wins, and you're talking Cincinnati, Toledo type range.
Mhm.
I wouldn't, maybe even the Growlers. If
Yeah,
you're looking
that
at
to
that,
me is a little bit more
that's normal. I think that's that's the mean. Like, that's what what's
they're
the phrase?
regressing to the mean.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to progress back to the mean, where it's like, okay, this is where you should actually be,
Right.
where you're in the low 100s, upper 90s, not pushing almost 120 and
Right.
some change. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think I agree with you. I think we're going to see a regression because it's very rare to see something like this where you're getting a team that's that high. So, yeah, I think we're going to see a more normal season out of Idaho. It's just wasn't here. Here's my question for you,
Mhm.
because you changed your question up. Here's my question though. Okay, so if they go back to the mean of low 100s, upper 90s,
Mhm.
do you see the rest of the division maybe catching up? Because you look at,
Ooh.
Allen had 77, Kansas City had 76, Utah 74, your Wichita Thunder had 73, and Rapid City had 71.
Mhm.
And then you got Tulsa at 53, but
Right.
but
Uh,
here, do you see any of those teams kind of making that difference, even if Idaho gets back to low 100s, upper 90s? Do you see any of those teams catching ground?
um, yes, I do. Um, the question that I had, and I wrote this down. Um, Allen won't have Hank Crone
Mm-hmm.
this year, who won the Rookie of the Year and posted over 100 points. They also won't have Jack Combs, who posted 90 points. Instead, they bring in Matt Marcineau, who went from Rapid City down to Allen. Um, which is a 60 to 70 point guy, how do you replace 200 points of offense if you're Allen? That's a fair question.
It's a fair question, and like, but here's the crazy: like you said all those points, and they Allen still finished with a -3 goal differential, and they still
Right.
finished
Well,
37. Yeah,
they couldn't play defense. Somebody somebody in this division is going to have to play defense instead of giving up 5 or 6 a game.
Yeah,
I
and that's why we saw Idaho with a 290 goals for, because
Nobody
they
played
just
defense out here. It was like watching an NBA basketball game with like.
Oh, so you're saying it was the Wild West?
Oh,
Just
absolutely,
because.
yes. And I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Hey, someone's gonna get at the top of the mountain. It's just who's gonna do it is the thing.
That's right.
I'm
Right.
saying,
All gas, no brakes. You're headed to the top of the mountain.
this is the one thing I love about the ECHL that no one realizes. You can pun for days on this league, and there's. I'm sorry, a lot of puns.
I love a good nerdy pun.
Like you said, yeah, like it's just no defense was had, and for Allen, that's 100 points and another 90-point guy. That's so tough because you're talking. That's such a big drop.
That's a big chunk of their offense that is gone.
And if they still can't figure out defense, like,
yeah,
it's not going to help either. So I mean,
yeah, Kansas City. I think Kansas City's big issue is what are they going to do without Shane Sterrett, who played 54 regular season games for them last year, and then started all of the playoff games that the Mavs had in their 6-game first-round series with the Allen Americans. So Shane Sterrett played 60 games last year.
That body's tired. That body is tired.
Right. How do you replace that in net if you're Kansas City? Utah is going to be there. I think that the slow start with them not getting as many players early on from Colorado really kind of hurt them. They not that they didn't recruit well, but I think they just had some injury issues up front and things like that. And once they got healthy and they got those players back from Colorado up in the American League, I think we saw Utah put a charge into a pretty good run, coming from the bottom of the division up to 4th by the time the season wrapped. Wichita had 3 bad weeks last year. When Evan Buitenhuis went into the goaltender relocation program, the Thunder head coach Bruce Ramsey was looking under. There was probably an advertisement for a goaltender on the side of the Thunder bus. There were so many goaltenders. They had Eric Dopp, Justin Kappelmaster. There were several different goaltenders who were not good for the Thunder in that 3-week stretch, and that was the 3 weeks that defined them until Trevor Gorsuch got to town. And with Trevor Gorsuch now in net for a full season for Wichita, combined with the fact that the Thunder now pick up a 28-game winner from a year ago in Beck Warm, thanks to the San Jose Barracuda, and the fact that they could potentially get either Romanov or Magnus Krona from San Jose at some point in a flip-flop role, because San Jose will have 3 goaltenders up in the American Hockey League. I think the goaltending depth for Wichita went from being extremely thin with Evan Buitenhuis checking into the goaltender relocation program to now being one of the deepest in the division, probably on par, not necessarily on par with Idaho's last year, but I think it could be the deepest in the division. If there's a dark horse here, I think to break into slots 2, 3, and 4, if we're to assume that Idaho is going to run away and hide again, if there's a team who I think is going to come out of the 5, 6, 7 hole to get up in there, it's Wichita. Because you not only bring back Braden Watts, Jay Dickman, and Mikhail Stenell, who all had 60-point plus efforts last year, but now you bring in several players from the San Jose organization, and now you have depth at goaltending, which you did not have a year ago.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like -9 last year, that's not bad for Wichita, like you said, who had an issue in goaltending. And now you said now they have a rolling thunder of goalies that they can just run with.
Yes. By the way, listen to that podcast. Me and Jason Malls, the voice of the Thunder, do that. And that's a bi-weekly podcast here on the Hockey
Yeah,
Podcast Network in
couldn't help
Philly.
myself. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, you kind of broke up. So
you're good. You're good.
no,
Uh,
but yeah,
but yeah, I
I,
think Tulsa maybe also. Let me just jump in here real quick. I think Tulsa is probably another team to watch. Rob
mhm,
Murray doesn't have back-to-back bad years,
mhm.
and they picked up 2 contract goaltenders from San Diego recently, and I think that Tulsa is another team to watch closely as well. I just am not sure about Kansas City. Again, how do you replace Shane Sterrett in that? And then you have, I think 9 or 10 guys sent down from Coachella Valley. What happens if and when the injuries start up above?
Yeah,
How do you weather that storm if you're Tad O'Had and Riley Weslowski?
yeah, and then even for the Rush, I mean, they got a bunch of guys, but that's even tougher for them too because they're only 2 points back of the Thunder and 3 back of Utah. But even then, it's like you're kind of that's a toss up for them as well. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Thunder could probably be that team to hit 2, 3, 4. And like you said, we could see KC having a free fall. Allen could have a free fall too, because like you said, we just talked about they had lost a lot of scoring too. So I mean, you could probably look at Utah and Wichita maybe going up to 2 and 3, and then could you see that Rapid City could be in a fight with Kansas City and Allen Americans for the 4 spot if it
I
really
could
works
see
out? That because I mean,
I could
all those
see
teams,
Yeah, I could see Rapid getting up in there and
could,
fighting for
you're
that spot.
yeah, because you're only talking a 6 point difference between 2 and 6. They all beat the
Right.
crap out of each other, like you said. So if
Mhm.
Allen and Kansas City have a free fall, you could see just a lot of teams start going up, and then you can see the top. You can see 2 and 3 going towards the bottom because like you got teams below them that could be a little bit more low, like Utah,
Right.
Colorado, both Colorado. It's just when we mention Colorado, it's almost like you guys say which one is which because I don't know why they picked the same name for the start, but yeah, for the
Yeah.
Eagles, they just got a lot of guys from the Avalanche, and now they're going to have so many guys that they could probably send some of their guys down from the Eagles down to Utah. So I mean, Utah can be loaded up. Wichita's going to be loaded up too. I think Allen and Casey are going to have. We could probably see them fall farther down, and then the guys in 4, 5, 6 could probably make a case for 2, 3, 4 in all
Yeah.
realities. So I think the Mountain Division is going to be it's going to be a very interesting one to watch of seeing who's going to get into the playoffs. Because, like I said, the 6 points already from last year, and there's going to be some drop offs from 2 of them. Idaho, like we said, progress to the mean. They're still going to be so far ahead of this division unless they just completely collapse. I don't see anyone beating out Idaho at this point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So yeah, those are our division breakdowns. And remember, you can read these team by team breakdowns at fieldpasshockey.com. We'll have those out as we go through the week here on Field Pass Hockey. So let's go ahead and get into our picks. Time to put our money where our mouth is and to pick the 8 playoff teams from each conference. And then we will pick a Kelly Cup champion here, and then we'll shut the podcast down. I think, and we kind of alluded to this as we were going through the North and even the South. I think you and I both are in fairly good lockstep here of our North picks. I'll go first with mine. Newfoundland, Reading, Norfolk, and Maine are my 4 playoff teams in the North.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's gonna be. So, like, is that like in your actual order? Or are you just saying that who that's
No,
going to
I'm
make
just
it?
picking.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no specific order.
yeah, I would say it's Reading, Newfoundland, Norfolk, and Maine. Those 4, I think they're going to kind of just run away with the division. The only one that can make a case is probably the Railers, but even then, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm going Reading, Newfoundland, Norfolk, and Maine as well. You know who your teams are coming out of that division.
Yeah, and I think you know the same in the South as well. I have Florida, South Carolina, Greenville, and Jacksonville as my 4 playoff teams.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be those 4. The bottom 3 of that division. I don't really see them making any shot to beat those four, because the four at the top, they're loaded organization wise, just getting guys from their AHL squads and stuff like that. And just I don't see a big dip from the top four.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move to the Central. I have the Cincinnati Cyclones, followed by the Indy Fuel, the Wheeling Nailers, and your Fort Wayne Comets. I have the Toledo Walleye missing the playoff.
Oh, okay.
Let's see what we do there.
Oh, I think I see why you did that, because of the fact that because of the Comets getting their head coach, who's, like you said, is bringing some hardware.
Yeah, and here's the other thing that I would say as well with Wheeling. Kyle Dubas's plate was pretty packed to get Erik Karlsson early on in the offseason, and then he had I think there was another big move that Pittsburgh did over the offseason as well to kind of load up. He tinkers with those rosters as they go through the years. So don't get complacent there, Wheeling. Kyle Dubas is going to tinker with that organization going through the year. So go ahead, back to you. Sorry.
No, you're good. No, I think it's a good caveat to think about. Is like you are picking Wheeling, but don't assume it's gonna happen.
Right.
For me, I think it's gonna be Cincinnati. I think it's gonna be Toledo, Indy, and I think it's gonna be Wheeling. I think I have Fort Wayne missing the playoffs.
All right. That is interesting. That's interesting. Again, considering
originally I didn't have that. As we were going through our previews, I'm like, you know what though? I might need to change it. It was like a last second change on the fly as we were talking about it. So, but
there you go.
But sorry, you were going to say something.
No, you're good. You're good. You had Toledo. I have Toledo missing the playoffs. You have Fort Wayne, and I think maybe this goes back to the whole deal that we were talking about at the top of the Central preview of the coaching. Pat Mickish is a little bit more seasoned than than Jesse Kellicky, but Kellicky brings the hardware, having won 2 Kelly Cups. Obviously, both of these teams are going to win their boatload of games. But I think what undid it for Fort Wayne last year and made that division not as top heavy as it could have been was the fact that they were in the penalty box for a quarter of the season.
Yeah.
If Fort Wayne stays out of the box and plays a cleaner game, then I think that they have a chance of being in a better spot. But again, to your point, I want to see what Toledo does in games. I want to see how they perform here getting off to the start. But like I said, I have them missing the playoffs.
Which
and
is fair.
I'm sure I'll be reviled there in Wheeling land or in Toledo land by the Fish fans.
Hey, don't worry. Fort Wayne's probably going to be coming for me, so it's all right.
We take on all comers, as you'll hear with the power rankings a little bit later. Season, yes. So, who do you have for your Mountain playoff teams?
I got Idaho. I got Utah, Wichita, and the fourth one is going to be very interesting. I got Rapid City.
All right. That is interesting.
I think Kansas City and Allen are gonna struggle this year, like we talked about. And I think those 4 teams that we talked about earlier during our Mountain preview that could make a jump up, I think they're gonna do it, because like we said, it was only 6 points between all 4 of those teams last year, from 2 to 6. Yeah. So I think we're gonna see a change of the guard with Idaho kind of just doing their own thing farther down the river, catching fish. So it's just gonna be, You wouldn't think I could figure out how to do a good one for the Idaho Steelheads, but I kind of did.
I got it. Yeah, you could do that as well.
I'm sorry.
And American Dad Chad Costello there behind the All-American bench. So I will give you my 4 playoff teams, and I think that they are reasonably similar to what you have. I have Idaho. I think like you said, they go run away and hide and play in the river and catch fish. I have Wichita making the playoffs. I have Utah making the playoffs.
Okay.
And fourth for me is the Allen Americans.
Okay.
Um,
So we're pretty
there's
close. We're pretty close.
there's reason to believe that Hank Crone may come back at some point
Hmm.
to Allen. Now, whether he picks up right where he left off in his MVP and Rookie of the Year campaign a year ago, probably not to be expected, but I think that it is fair to assume that he's going to put points up on the board. Matt Marcineau, if he's healthy and he's checked in all year, will probably get you 70 to 80 points. And I think that if you take those two players out, Crone and Combs, that that leaves a hole for you to fill, but I think that you fill it with more depth. So I'm eager to see how Allen looks offensively. Um, but for me, I think that the offense is enough to counteract what they do on defense and in net to get them into the playoffs. I still don't feel like they're going to be a good defensive team.
No, I can agree with you there.
So,
It's very possible. Yeah. So we're kind of close, just that one team
yeah.
difference. But I mean, I could see either Allen or Rapid City kind of fighting for that potential last spot. Who really knows? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I can
So,
see that.
who do you have as your Kelly Cup champion?
Oh, bias or unbiased opinion?
Well, I know bias. I know
Yeah,
bias.
we all know, but we both know who our bias picks would be.
Our
You know what I mean?
bias, yes. My bias pick would want to put up another championship picture over here, next to the one that they
Yeah,
won 30 years ago. But
yeah,
yeah, who
and my bias would love to just hoist the first
get
one
you?
ever. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Um,
you're unbiased.
my unbiased. The thing is, I would love to say Idaho, but I'm not. I'm not saying Idaho. I would love to say them just because even if they're going to come back down to the means of they're going to have a normal season,
Mhm.
I still don't think that they have what it takes to do it. I think no one in the South. If I'm going unbiased, no one in the South wins it this year. I think there is no three-peat.
Okay.
I got the Reading Royals.
Whoa.
I got the
Kelly Cup
Reading
number
Royals.
2.
Yeah, I think the Reading Royals are going to, and I'll even give you my West team just for the fun of it.
Okay.
Cincinnati Cyclones.
So we're gonna get a Kelly Cup rematch from the year that I think the Royals won it all, the year that they played Cincy. That's interesting. Um,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Idaho winning the West again. I
Okay.
don't I part of me wants to think that they're going to cash this in.
Hmm.
But I still can't get over that they went 4 and out in the Kelly Cup final last year. And honestly, I think South Carolina is a really, really, really solid team. So I have South Carolina taking on Idaho in the Kelly Cup finals and Mr. Kelly's Chalice going back to South Carolina and Brendan
Wow.
getting his first championship as a head coach.
Okay. I think the Greenville contingent might not be happy with that selection for the fact it's an in-state rival just down 26.
Yeah.
But
But
as the ambassador to Greenville, how dare you, sir? Pick those guys. No, I mean South Carolina.
I didn't want to get stung by the stingray, so
Oh, not touching that one. I'm
no,
not touching that one.
no, probably not.
It's a solid pick. I would love to say someone from the South is going to do it, but I don't know. For me, it's just something like it was a toss up between Reading and Newfoundland, and I think just based on how Reading is right now, I think they just kind of something about Reading to me is screaming they got the juice. They
Yeah,
got something this year to do it. And I just picked Cincinnati because I thought it'd be kind of a good, like, okay, here's an interesting pick. Let's go with Cincinnati just because I think just the travel between Cincinnati and Reading would be very, very interesting. The fact you got two teams that close together, traveling fans are going to make that whole Cup final explosive in terms of just the attendance and all that. Because you're talking like Idaho or to Pennsylvania, that's some travel. But,
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it is what it is. But honestly, I mean, there's so many teams you could actually pick out of. It's like for me, it was tough for me just to figure out who was going to be on each conference because there's so many good teams.
Sure.
It's kind of like who do you pick out of it? So, but interesting. Idaho and South Carolina. That's you want to talk about two different just time zones and cultures.
Both of those fan bases, man, I'm telling you, they travel. Yeah. I've seen South Carolina here in Wichita. Granted, it's been a few years, but that South Carolina contingent traveled really well.
Yeah, that they do.
Idaho, they won't be here in Wichita this year, but Idaho travels really well as well. So, it's going to be fun. We're juiced to go. And again, you can find all of the written previews on fieldpasshockey.com. We'll have those for you as we go throughout the week. And then you and I, Mr. Martin, will be back next week with another episode of the Coast Cast, and we will have another guest we'll have a guest. We didn't have one this time. And we'll talk about opening weekend of hockey. Have a great trip. You're headed down to Nollins. Yep. Have a great trip. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. We'll be 14th to the 21st. It's going to be a good time down there. So looking forward to it.
Have a few beignets and
that's the plan. That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah. And, if you see Jim Cantori head your way, go ahead and head on out,
Yeah.
It's that time of the year.
Yeah, so. It is.
So that is going to do it for us here on the Coast Cast. Thank you all so much for listening and watching, and make sure you go support our friends at DraftKings again with that promo code THPN. There you can get $5. You bet $5, you get $200, and go ahead and maybe if you feel desired, go ahead and throw some money down on Miami to cover. That's a very large spread, and Carolina is a very bad football team. So that's all the betting advice that I can give you, and that's all the betting advice that I want to give you, because if I gave you betting advice and I actually connected on it, we wouldn't be doing this podcast. I'd be Mike Florio and be really rich or something like that. So anyway, thank you all so very much for listening. We will talk to you again next week as we wrap up the opening week of the ECHL season. Get to the rink and have a little fun for us. We'll talk to you soon. Everybody be safe. This has been the Coast Cast, giving you a look at AA hockey in North America. Want to hear more? Download the show on any major podcast platform and support the Hockey Podcast Network. Stay current on all the news, listen to live games, and other podcasts covering the AHL, ECHL, and SPHL by downloading the Field Pass Hockey app.